All right, welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're diving into a foundational guide from Pride Palace, and we are going to unpack two concepts that honestly sound incredibly similar, but are actually distinctly different. We're talking about gender identity and gender expression. There's a lot to cover, so let's jump right in.
So you hear these terms thrown around a lot, right? Identity, expression. What exactly is the difference? It is super common to just use them interchangeably, and, even really well-meaning people do it all the time. But doing that actually misses the complex, nuanced reality of the human experience. So let's go ahead and separate these two ideas in a way that's simple and straightforward.
Let's start from the inside out. Gender identity? That is entirely about your internal sense of self. It's how you feel and how you define your own gender. And the absolute most crucial part to understand here is that it exists completely regardless of what anyone else might assume based on your outward appearance or the gender you were assigned at birth. Gender identity is a profoundly personal truth. It literally doesn't even need to be visible to anyone else in the room for it to be 100% valid.
And look, this goes way beyond those traditional, rigid boxes of just male and female. A person might identify as a woman, a man, both, neither, or somewhere completely in between. It's like a vast spectrum. In fact, cultures all over the world have recognized way more than just two genders for thousands of years, long before our modern terminology ever caught up. The reality is, someone might know exactly who they are on the inside long before they ever feel ready to share that with the outside world. Okay, so if identity is the inside, let's contrast that with the external presentation, gender expression. This is how a person outwardly presents their gender to the world. We are talking about everyday things, clothing choices, hairstyle, the pitch of someone's voice, their body language, and just their overall aesthetic. It is quite literally how someone chooses to express themselves and how they navigate being seen by others on a daily basis.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how incredibly flexible expression is. While your core identity might be a steady internal compass, your expression is totally dynamic. Think about your own life for a second. You probably don't dress or act the exact same way at a formal corporate meeting as you do hanging out at a weekend concert, right? Expression changes based on the context. It can shift with your mood, your cultural background, or just your own personal style evolving as you grow.
So, if you take away just one thing today, let it be this. Gender identity is who you are. Gender expression is how you show it. While these two things can and, often do align perfectly for some folks, they simply do not have to. There is absolutely no rule out there dictating that your outward expression has to neatly match your internal identity in a way that society finds instantly recognizable. Now let's look at how mixing these up plays out in the real world. Have you ever heard someone say, "Well, you don't look non-binary"? According to the guide from Pride Palace, statements exactly like this stem directly from confusing identity with expression. It places this bizarre, unfair burden of proof on an individual's clothing or haircut, basically demanding that they dress a certain way just to validate their own existence.
Because when we expect people to look a certain way based on their internal gender, we end up making totally false assumptions. It reinforces these rigid stereotypes that, frankly, we've been trying to outgrow for decades. More than that, it invalidates the unique, diverse experiences of actual people, and it ultimately forces incredibly complex human beings into tiny, predefined boxes, and nobody fits perfectly into a box.
So here is a much-needed reality check for all of us. There is no single way to look like any gender, period. A person's outward presentation, the fabric they choose to wear, how they cut their hair, the way they walk, does not change who they are on the inside. Embracing this specific idea is a real game changer because it allows us to let go of our preconceived notions and simply let people be exactly who they are.
To put that into perspective, let's look at what this diverse expression actually looks like in practice. A person who identifies as non-binary can absolutely present in a super feminine or highly masculine way. A man can rock a full face of makeup. A woman can embrace a sharply androgynous style. And none of those flexible outward expressions invalidate or change their deeply held personal identity. The two concepts operate entirely independently of each other. This incredible variety is perfectly captured when you look at the broader LGBTQ+ community. From transgender and bisexual to gender fluid and pansexual, the Pride Palace Guide highlights how each of these identities is represented by its own distinct, vibrant pride flag. It just goes to show that the human experience isn't some simple coin flip between two options. It's a beautiful, deeply nuanced spectrum of identities and expressions. Now I know, you might be sitting there thinking, wow, that is a lot of terminology to memorize. But here is the absolute best part. You don't need to have all the answers to be respectful and supportive. You really don't. You don't need a PhD in gender studies or perfect recall of every single identity label to just be a good person. What truly matters is being open to listen, to learn, and to recognize that everyone's experience walking through this world is uniquely theirs.
There's a quote from the Pride Palace Guide that hits the nail right on the head. Gender identity is personal, gender expression is flexible, and both deserve to be respected without question. Respecting this distinction is exactly what gives people the breathing room to simply exist authentically, to explore who they really are, and to define themselves freely without the crushing weight of society's expectations holding them down.
So, I want to leave you with a question to chew on as you go about your day. How can you move beyond those rigid expectations today to create a space where everyone around you can express themselves freely? Think about how you perceive the people you interact with, whether that's at work, in your own family, or just out running errands at the grocery store. I really hope this explainer empowered you with the insight to make the world just a little bit more welcoming. Thanks so much for learning with me today.